For your final week in the Scratch Club Station for Coding Club, you're going to create an asteroids game. I'm going to give you the base of the game, and then the rest of the time you're going to be writing some challenges to see if you can add your own features to the game. So let's see how it works first. I'm going to hit the green flag. When I use my left and right arrow buttons on my keyboard, I'm moving left and right. And if I hit my up arrow, it's going to shoot a laser beam and I can destroy the asteroid before it lands on my planet. Notice too, when I'm shooting, I can shoot a bunch of these lasers at a time. We're going to use a feature called cloning to do that. So if you look at the laser beam, that laser is actually just a sprite. And I'm cloning it or making several copies of that sprite. So that's what we're going to do. Let's create a new project. I'm going to say create and get a blank project. I'm going to give it a name. I'm going to call it asteroids. You can call it whatever you like. I'm going to get rid of the cat because I don't need a cat. I do, however, need 3 sprites. 2 from the library, 1 I'm going to paint. So I'm going to go from the library under transportation. I'm going to pick the spaceship. And I'm also going to pick a rock under things. That's going to be my asteroid. There's the rocks. Choose OK. The third thing I'm going to do is create a painted laser. So I'm going to go and paint a new sprite by clicking on the paintbrush. This is my paint editor. I'm going to pick yellow so it shows up against the black sky in my space theme. I'm going to choose a rectangle and I'm going to make sure that it's filled. I'm going to make a very small little, like a laser beam, as close as I can to the center of my screen. And I click off of there, and now I have my laser sprite. These are kind of big, so I'm going to click on the shrink tool and then click several times on my spaceship to shrink that down. That's about a good size. Move him down to the bottom. The rock I'm going to take care with my code, and the laser beam I will as well. So let's start writing code for the spaceship. So you have written code like this before. Make sure you click on the spaceship. Under scripts, we're going to add 2 events when a key is pressed. It says space, but we're going to pick right arrow and left arrow. And I'm going to say when the right arrow is pressed, I'm going to, under motion, point in direction right. So it's already right for this one. And then I'm going to move 10 steps. If I right click on this, I can duplicate it. I won't have to select those again, but make sure that under the left one, you change it to point left. So now this should be working. Oops, except that he is turning on his head. Let's click the eye and change his rotation style to left and right. You could also do that with code. You could say, add some code here. It says when the green flag is clicked, set his rotation style to left and right. Either way, 2 ways to do the same thing. One more thing I'm going to do that won't be apparent to you until you run the game is that you want to make sure that your laser isn't on top of your spaceship. To do that, I'm going to click on my spaceship and I'm going to change it under looks to go to front, the very bottom here. That just makes sure that my spaceship is always on top, which makes my laser beam seem to come out of the spaceship and not be weirdly on top of it. So that is all the code for my spaceship. The spaceship doesn't actually do the shooting. The laser beam does its own shooting, if that makes sense. So the next code we're going to write is for our laser beam. So let's click the eye and let's change that to laser. To give it a name so it's clear when we read our code, it's good to do that so we can follow our code later. And this one I'm going to say when the up arrow is pressed, I'll choose this one and change it to up arrow. This is where we're going to create the clone. Remember I said there was going to be one laser beam, but it's going to create several little laser beams. I'm going to clone this item. So I'm going to say when the up arrow is clicked, create a clone of myself. Then I can add this that says when I start as a clone, this is what I'm going to do. You should know a little something about cloning. The original sprite doesn't go away. It just kind of sits there on the screen. So I'm going to add a little bit of code to hide the original sprite, the original laser, so it's not just sitting there on the screen. Then when the up arrow is pressed, it's going to create a clone, and the clone will become visible because the clone will know what to do and it will have the behavior that we want. So I'm going to make it, when it starts as a clone, I'm going to show it because it would be hidden because the original one is hidden. When you clone it, the clone would also be hidden. And then under motion, I'm going to say go to, and I'm going to say go to the spaceship. So go immediately to where the spaceship is, and then I'm going to glide it by 1 second. Glide by 1 second, and I want it to glide in the same X position where I am all the way up to 180. 180 is the topmost Y position in my scratch screen. So I'm going to say glide from my current X position of the spaceship where I just went to and make this be 180 or the top of my screen. One more thing I'll add here. After that clone has done its job, we're going to delete it. I know that Scratch will actually run out of clones eventually if you shoot enough of these lasers. So deleting the clone when you're done, it's going to be up here not doing any work anyway. We're going to delete it so we free up some resources to add more lasers. So the next code, the final code we have to write together is the code for the rock or the asteroids. We're going to do something similar because we want this rock to kind of move around and random locations, maybe even 2 rocks at the same time. You could change your code to do that. So we'll do a clone of this one as well. I'm going to say when the green flag is clicked, just like the last one, hide this rock. Otherwise you will have this weird rock sitting in the middle of your screen. Then we're going to say forever. I want you to wait 2 seconds and then drop another asteroid, or really create a clone of myself. So it's going to create a clone, and then when it starts as a clone, this is what it's going to do. It's going to go to, under motion, a random location. So under operators, I'm going to say pick a random location between -240 and 240. That's going to be the left and rightmost X positions on our scratch screen. And it's going to glide to 200, which is well off the screen because the top of this is 180. I just clicked on it, which is why it moved up there. 180 is the top of my Y position. So once I have selected a random location, I'm going to show myself. And then I'm going to start to glide down, slowly down to the ground. So I'm going to go back to motion and glide. This time for 3 seconds, so it's going to be a slower falling. And I'm going to go to my current X position, or wherever that rock ended up in my random location, and then drop down to -220, which is well off the bottom of my screen. And again, I want to free up resources, so I'm going to delete the clone when he is done falling. So one last thing to do, we want to make it so that when the laser beam touches the asteroid appears to explode. So we're going to do that with the rock. We're going to use a pixelate graphic effect to make it appear like it's crumbling. So let's add another thing to do when I start as a clone. So it's able to do 2 things at once. So it's going to be falling. It's also going to be checking to see if it should be exploding. So when I start as a clone, forever if I sense under sensing that I am touching the laser, then I'm going to want to start to pixelate. Let's write the pixelate code off on the side. I'm going to repeat it 5 times. I'm going to go to looks, and I'm going to change the color effect, except I'm going to change it to pixelate effect by 25. So 5 times it's going to become more and more and more pixelated. If I run this, you'll see what it looks like over here. You can click on clear graphic effect if that bothers you and you want your rock back the way it was. It does not matter. And then I'm going to hit hide underneath here. So it's going to pixelate, pixelate, pixelate more and more and more, and then hide itself. So I'm going to add that right in here. If it touches the laser, that's our explosion code right there. So if I run this, I should be able to shoot, and when I hit an asteroid, I get that little pixel explosion. So if you finished that, great job. This background is very white, and the space in my mind is black. So I'm going to change my backdrop. I'll go to Stage, Backdrops, and we're going to, first of all, fill it black. So I'll pick the black color in my Fill tool and just dump that right in. It's already looking a lot like space. I'm going to click my paintbrush and the white color and just dot in random locations, put some stars. You want to draw the Big Dipper, that would be fun. But there you go. So there is your space game. Some things that you might want to add to this would be, notice if you watch me play the game, as I'm playing, what happens if a rock hits me? Probably something bad should happen. Maybe the spaceship has a health meter, and after it gets hit 3 times, the game is over. You may want to accumulate points when you are shooting the asteroids. You may want to add a noise, a sound, when the asteroid, when you shoot a laser, and or when the laser touches the rock. So I may want to hear a shooting noise, like a laser noise, and an explosion noise. A more maybe advanced challenge would be to have some other sprite fall or appear. Maybe something appears along the ground over here that gives you like a extreme speed, like a star or something, a Martian, something that gives the spaceship more speed, and then it can move twice as fast as it was before. I would do that by creating a variable for the spaceship's speed and say instead of moving 10 steps, move a variable amount of steps and then change that periodically to a different speed. Those would all be great challenges, but if you just finish this much of the game, consider that a real success and good job. So get your worksheets, the handouts for this lesson, go ahead and write the code and see how far you can get with the challenges for today.